Hello, I just wanted to share with you a little tip on how to do some shading with your pencil without having to understand all the complexities of how light and shadow work. So, here's a little cat character with his little broken sword, so he's going to have a hard time in his impending battle. I'm going to shade him. You could do this with any character. It could be inked or it could just be in pencil. Doesn't matter. And this will just be a little pencil shading video where I'll show you some shortcuts. So basically, the shortcut is if you can get from dark value to medium to light and to very light values with your pencil by pressing harder for the darker values, lighter and lighter to get with less pressure to get the lighter values. That's all you need to make your pencil art look really cool without having to understand all the complexities of dark and light. So here's the shortcut: shade the bottom of things. By shading, I mean press harder to get the darker value on the bottoms of things. Okay, so by that I mean everything. The bottom of the foot, harder. I'm pressing, and then lighter as I go up. Okay, now the bottom of the pants, pressing harder to get a darker value, and then lighter and lighter as I go up. Now, this leaves some things out like cast shadows that would happen from this coat. And because it would actually create a little shadow here that would be pretty dark because light wouldn't be able to hit that if it's like moonlight or sunlight or the light in the building he's in or wherever he is. Generally speaking, the shortcut is you'll still that's going to be the only cast shadow I do. Everything else, I'm just going to show you that how it can still look great with this little tip. Shade dark at the bottom by pressing harder with your pencil and lighter as you go up. The bottoms of things, so not just this so not just the whole character, like just shade the bottom of them, do everything at the light, do everything light at the top. No, I mean shade everything. So like the hand, the sleeve, this part of the sleeve. Now, if you know more about light and shadow, of course you can apply that. If you know other techniques about shading, then apply that to what you already know, right? Because you know more, so you can go even further. But this is a good sort of beginner's tip that you can use with any pencil drawing or even if you've inked it. And the idea is that you have darker values at the bottom by pressing harder because and then lighter values at the top by being softer with your pencil because light in most all circumstances but not all shines from above us unless you got like flashlight or something shining that you're holding below you, then the moonlight, the sunlight, the lights in a building indoors, those all shine from above, which means the light is going to be hitting the tops of things, whether it's the hat or this jacket. So this will be a big shape that I'm going to shade in the same way, pressing harder along the bottom. And generally, another tip is you want to go in the direction, if you can think about that, if you can figure that out, makes it look better in the end. Think about the direction of the form. So, in other words, this jacket, if I'm thinking about it in 3D, it wraps around, it comes down, and then it would go up at the top. And so that's the direction I'm shading in, right? This part of the sleeve is more just straight up and down. So I'm straight across. And this is a big space, so this takes a little longer. So I might just go light all the way across. And then put my darker values on top. And I've got this pencil is, I think, a B, which means, in case you ever wondered about with the B or the H or the 2H and all of that, it's not going to go very dark. I actually just switched it out recently because I usually prefer 4B. So the difference in those pencils, if you ever wondered, you've got H on one side and B on the other, and HB is in the middle. And actually, I'm going to flip these around so it matches my spectrum of values here. So we've got B, H, HB in the middle. And so the B spectrum over here, we've got, you can have, suppose you can have 10B maybe. I don't know. Definitely 9B. And then it goes, 8B, 7B, all the way to 4B, which is one of my favorites, 2B. Then it goes to HB, and then maybe H. Then it starts working up to 2H, 4H, up to whatever, 6, 7, 8H, right? So the numbers, like a number line. So these are going to be your darker values. And the reason you can get darker, you can more easily get darker values with 9B, 8B, 4B instead of a 2H is because the lead is softer. So if the lead is softer, more comes off more easily. Think about it that way. The lead is softer, so you have to press. You don't have to press as hard to get the lead or the graphite to come off, and so it's going to be more easily produce that dark value. Whereas if you have a H, then it's going to be, the H's are going to be very hard. So these are harder pencils, which means you're going to have to press really hard to even make a mark. And it gets harder as you go higher up in the number. 6H, 7H, those are really hard leads. The reason I don't like these so much is that it can tear the paper or like make indentions in the paper when you don't mean them to, when you don't want them to, because the lead is so hard. So these will be lighter leads. And let's see if I have some actually, so I could show you. Plus, I need to switch out to a darker one because this one is a uh, like I said, a B, and I want darker somewhere in here. I don't know. This is all my bunch of junk pencils. 6H. So this is a 6H. This is gonna be really hard. Like I'm pressing really hard, and that's as dark as it goes. And this is a B. I'm pressing the same with the same amount of pressure. You can see immediately how much darker it is. Um, this is a 9H, so this is gonna be super hard, and we'll get that's even lighter. Might not be able to tell much, but that's even lighter. And then this is a 2B, so this is a little bit darker than what I was using here. Now, another tip that you can use for shading is called hatching, and I do that a lot with my art. I do hatching in ink and in pencil, and it's creates a really cool effect. And that is where you actually want to see the distinction in the lines. You actually want to see the individual lines instead of like all of it blending together like I've done here. And the same thing applies like in the areas where you want it to be darker. So like at the bottoms of things, if we're using this shortcut technique, then I'll press harder for darker lines. So like down here, and then lighter lines with softer pressure up top. Now that's hatching if you go one direction. If you go two directions, like tic-tac-toe board, then that's called a cross hatching. Now, what do you notice when I do uh, cross hatching and I put more lines there? The more lines you put, the darker it gets because it's filling in more white space. So it's something to keep in mind. More hatching lines will create darker values. So sort of two ways to think about shading and pencil. You could do one or the other. Sometimes I suppose you could even do both if you wanted, but generally I would do one or the other. One is this blending technique where you just get darker to lighter by changing the amount of pressure you put on your pencil. The other is the more lines you have, the darker the value appears. So that's good for where shadows are, or you just want darker values, like something is colored dark. And then the less lines you do, the lighter it appears. So maybe the face, I want like maybe it's a white or a yellow cat. It's like not a dark cat. So I could just do some light lines that are spread out to create a slightly darker value than white. But if I want maybe the sword handle is really dark, plus I want to shade the bottom, then I can do a bunch of lines back and forth, cross hatching, and that creates that darker value. So I could do just hatching. I could do just blending like I've done here in the tail and the legs, or I could do both in the same area. I'll do darker here where I'm doing this blending technique. So this is hatching up here. That's more blending. And now I'm loosening the pressure as I get higher up on the sword handle. This was a little silly cat character actually that I taught in a class where some of the best designs, maybe all of the best designs of characters actually come from very simple combinations of very simple shapes. You can think about them circles, squares, or triangles, or you could think of them in terms of rounded, blocky, and pointy shapes because they don't need to actually be perfect squares, circles, and triangles, of course. And so you can see the basic shapes. These all triangular pointy shapes, like type number 3 and type number 2 of some of these blockier shapes. Like you see head and his outfit and his sword and his arms. Now, since I did hatch, generally I would say whatever type of shading you're going to do, whether you're doing the blending and hatching, I would say do that throughout the entire design. If you're mixing, you can do either or you can layer them both, which is fine. But whatever you choose to do on one part, it usually is going to be better if you do that on all the parts. It's going to look pretty strange if I'm blending some parts and then other parts I'm hatching. Sometimes that works, but rarely. When you have a clash of styles like that in the same character, or a clash of methods like that in the same character, it's gonna look pretty odd sometimes. So what I'm doing actually is I'm gonna do it all in that hatching style. I'm adding these hatching lines. Now I'm gonna finish them up in just a minute, so won't complete all of them. You can see how much better he looks than when he started in the beginning of this video. Now, when you're hatching objects that are curved, it's going to help if you think about the curvature of the object itself and do curved lines instead of straight lines. So if I'm hatching a sphere instead of a 2D shape, you could think about these are called contour lines, but you don't need to know all that. Just curve the lines around it. So that looks much more 3D now, just with simple hatching lines. And in that case, what I just did was first I had the curved hatching lines, and then for the darker lines where the darker shadow is, I just did quick straight hatching lines, which is super quick. So you could always do that too. Now this is a 2B. Where is my 4B or 6B? Because I could more easily get darker values, darker shadows with that. Let's see. I didn't label this one. I'm not sure what lead this is. I think it's B though. Maybe 2B. I'm gonna do a little bit on the hat, and that'll be done. So the main point was on the bottoms of things, you can do things darker and then lighten up as you get to the top, and that's sort of the shortcut for shadows. And then on the as you get higher and higher, lighten up. Two ways to lighten up. One is with pressure, like you see here in this blending method. The other way you could do your variation in value with the hatching technique by the number of lines you add. So maybe I'll do that for this hat. This is a B. It is not very dark. Uh, Darker than the H's, but I gotta do some hunting to find my darker value, uh, softer leads after this. And I'm adding more lines at the bottom of this section of the hat to get the shadow along the bottom edge. And along the bottom of the hat here. You could also do it along the bottoms of these parts of the hat. So, like I said, along the bottoms of all of the things is sort of the shortcut. Even the bottom of this section of the hat, making darker. Now, this is the top of his head, but this gets into the next lesson outside the scope of this little lesson. But that's cast shadows when something is casting a shadow onto something else. Because that's otherwise stick to shadows on the bottoms of things, and that'll get you 80% of the way. All right, so there's a quick little shading lesson in my little this little traveler journeyman cat. Wishing him better luck on his next adventure. Thanks for checking it out. Hopefully this is helpful for you.